Hello and welcome to this newest video of mine. Today we march for Macragge. I've printed a Ultramarine First Company Vanguard veteran with an energy axe from the files of Fummelfinger or Bolterjugend and added some other designers' parts. This is a miniature for Inquisitor, so it is 65 millimeters. It's a big lad, and we gonna through this video with airbrushing the armor panels, roughening them up a bit, going on with the other details and like the verdigris on the metal parts, some rust effects, minor rust effects, and of course these glowing energy axe like a lava or magma axe. If you want to know which part of the video I tackle which topic, go to the timeline. It is there if you want to, for example, see how I done the tabard or the eye lenses. Just check out the timeline. Grab yourself some something to drink or a snack, cause it's gonna be a cozy 35 minutes of this tutorial. So let us dive in. This is the kind of pre-assembled miniature, or the digital pre-assembled miniature. I primed in black and start straight with a medium gray like a zenithal highlight through the airbrush. This is for the kind of pre-shading, if you like so, and that the vibrant color of blue that's applied later would stick better onto all these damn armor panels. In this case, I also spray the helmet in this color, cause it's the primary color for the helmet. Vanguard, veteran, first company, white helm, of course, lore reasons. This just looks cool. Next up, I grab Steel Blue from Vallejo Model Air and spray paint these areas where there is more shadow. So a bit from the horizontal angle and down below to give the shadows the needed depth with this blue tone, and just focus on the shadows. You don't need to spray paint the whole miniature, just focus on the lower areas. And next up is Dark Blue RLM24. This color is used for the kinda mid-tone blue. It's applied on all the areas where I pre-shaded with gray and slightly sprayed into the shadow areas to give it a more natural feeling. I don't like these oversaturated shadows on like on other miniatures you see in the internet, so this is the furthest I go with dark areas on these big miniatures. Next up, I mix dark blue as before with the UK Azure in roughly 1:1 to highlight some of the areas on these large armor panels to give them a bit more variation and depth. And next up is UK Azure as pure tone on all the areas where I think light would hit the most. And keep in mind, this is the final highlight. Everything else on the armor is just the battle damage or weathering, so to speak, that I do. All this lighting effect comes from the airbrush steps. I go back to Steel Blue and spray some of the areas a bit more where I thought that there need to be a bit more transition. So spraying in from the shadow areas into the previously with UK Azure highlighted areas, and this is the result. We go on for the sponging technique. This is a color called Hoeth Blue. It's like the mid-tone, and I sponge in on all the edges. For sponging, you grab a bit of paint onto a rough sponge, wipe off most of the excess. It's a bit like dry brushing, and then stipple it on or go into like dry brushing motion over the miniature so that you can hit all the areas you need to. Next up, some color variation to get a grips on where all the colors are and how it is positioned, or for example where need to be some more highlights or some more interesting areas. I get Corvus Black on all the soft armor and the breast belts for the jump pack. I get Steel Legion Drab on the tabard and on all these parchment paper on these small wax sigils. Conrad for the eye lenses, the wax on the purity seals, and the crack grenades. Cause crack grenades need to be red and frag grenades need to be green. This is since I've played Chaos Gate back in the day, and it stuck with me all the time. So this is just a guilty pleasure thing. Dried bark for all the leather pieces, like these small pouches and the holstered pistol. Maybe it's a holstered bolt pistol, something like this. Just apply it in a good coverage so that we can go on with the next color. For the colors I apply, keep in mind it's like this color right now is already the shadow tone for the area. I use Celestra Grey as an off-white for the Ultima symbol, for example the shoulder edges, the assault symbol on the shoulder, and the right knee pad where there will be a small freehand later. I guess somewhere in the process I applied Celestra Grey there when I got to grips on how the colors are situated on the whole miniature. There needed to be an additional interesting detail there. Iron Warrior for silver parts, Balthazar Golds for golden parts, Castellan Green for the laurel on the head, and maybe, if you got something like this, for frag grenades. This would be the same base color, I guess. And as you can see here, this small skull is still missing. I painted it later, gone back and forth here and there, just to show you the general feel on how to paint this miniature. As we got all the colors set up, I start with a edge highlighting, or better to say weathered highlighting. This is Hoeth Blue again, and I show you the steps on this right arm of the Vanguard veteran. I apply small lines and dots on the edges and get some of these lines into the areas so that it looks like there is the top layer of the color, of the armor's color, is damaged, and there are scratches and small indentations on the armor, so that you get a feel for depth, not using so much of the shadow colors on the whole miniature. And you can see here on the back side of the shoulder there is a bit darker of a tone, and on the front side there is a lighter tone, but you can see the transition here. I repeat the process with Blue Horror. This is a bit less than before and a bit more focused on the areas where light would hit, because these are the scratches where the light reflects differently than on the scratches on shadowed areas. So a bit less than before, and due to this being a really big miniature, there is a lot of space to get all these small details on. Keep in mind, if you paint a smaller 32 millimeter model, just reduce the amount of this detailing so it doesn't look that messy. Next up is Grey Seer. Somehow I used Grey Seer contrast spray overlay here. No, it's Grey Seer right out of the pot to apply a mid-tone on all the white areas, as I show you here on the trim and on the tactical, or better say assault symbol in 2 thin coats and go on with the Ulthuan Grey the same way. Just pick out the furthest edges of the arrows and draw in thin coats of paint into the symbol, for example. Get a damp brush, repeat it, 2 or 3 or 4 times, however much you need to be fine with the end result. And you maybe can see how I build up this gradual transition here on the trim. If you go for another company, just pick the needed color. For example, second company yellow, what is it? Third company red, and stuff like this. So it's fine. Pure red, white scar. This is kinda of an edge highlighting on these white areas, like I did before on the armor panels. Small dots, small lines, and as you can see here on the shoulder guard, there is a little bit of scripture painted in with Ulthuan Grey onto the armor panels. Just draw some small lines or symbols to accompany the feeling for this veteran guy. He inscribed his armor, of course, he got so many missions under his belt. Some verdigris onto the goldish parts. I start with a Nocturne Green. This is heavily diluted on the miniature, as you can see here, and used more like a glaze to give it a bit of a different finish. And next up, Lupercal Green, same step. I try to accumulate most of the paint, or the thickest coat of the paint, around these small rivets, because I guess these areas are a pain for the ship to servants to clean, and maybe there is the area where the verdigris will set at first when it appears. One additional go with Sybarit Green. Keep in mind, this is a bit hefty, a bit much, because I reduce the effect right now with some highlights. This is Balthasar Gold again, starting on a stark edge highlight. So maybe the edges are touched by hands or by environment or plants or something like this, and the verdigris is rubbed off a bit. So this is this effect to reduce the verdigris a bit more. And then I go for Runelord Brass for edge highlights and some of these battle damage areas here and there. In this case, I need to say it again, like in every video, I like my gold more in a brassy, in a more cold fashion than in a reddish or goldish yellowish fashion, so keep this in mind. This is the reason why I use Runefang Steel as a highlight for the metal parts here. If you want to go more on a yellow spectrum, go with something like, for example, Citadel's Liberator Gold or Auric Armor Gold. This would be fine then. I like it more in this cold color tone. Next up, the Tabard. I totally forgot to film the first step with Baneblade Brown, but it's not the problem. Baneblade Brown is painted the same way like I paint Karakstone right here, with a damp brush, so kinda diluted paint, and start in the center of some of these folds on the cloth and work around a bit more into the recesses, but leave the recesses showing through in the shadows. And doing this around the whole Tabard with Baneblade Brown at first, a bit less with Karakstone, and then, as you can see here, with Screaming Skull. And the brighter we go, the more defined the details get, because now we are in the area where I paint in some of these fabric defects, like a bit of a torn cloth. Same on the armor. There is roughed up edges and scratches on the armor. Why shouldn't there be some of these defects on the fabric? You know? Last step on the fabric, this is Palette Witch Flesh. And as you can see in the video, I already superglued in the head so that I can paint it better in the later stages, because it's a big piece. Yes, it's scaled up to 200%, but I got big clumsy fingers, so this is like the miniature is my painting handle. Next up, for the silver elements, I use Mournfang Brown from Citadel, heavily diluted, put it into the recesses, as you can see here. So paint in some paint, get a damp brush, and draw the color into the recesses, a bit like it's a shade for a light rusty effect. Next up, good old lead belcher onto all these metal parts for a highlight. This is like the mid-tone for all the color, and I reduce the rusty effects on the highlighted areas, as you can see here. And you don't need to paint the axe's head or blade, because there will be some airbrush magic applied later. As a final highlight for the silver parts, it's Runefang Steel again, to tie in with the other goldish metals. I like it when both metal tones got the same highlight color in this case, because it feels more natural. Onto the leather parts. This is Kedushan Fleshtone, the quote-unquote mid-tone, the real color for my leather areas, like pouches and holster, stuff like this, or maybe the grip or handle on the weapons. And I tend to go for a light, desaturated, a bit cold tone. If you want to go more into the orangey spectrum for your worn leather, go for Mournfang Brown and something akin to Scrag Brown and Towlight Ochre for the highlights. I went the way with Gorthor Brown. As you can see here, small dots, fine lines onto the edges, drawing in some of the lines and dots into the surfaces from the edge or just straight into the mid of the area to give the feeling of ultra worn edges. Next up is Baneblade Brown for this cold-ish appearance. These are, if you check old leather belts or something like this, these are the areas where the leather is most broken, because it's dry and it's bending and something is rubbing off, and there is the most of a structural defect into the leather area. Next up, all the parchment paper, Karak Stone as a mid-tone. Remember, Steely Drab was the base color we used for the shadows, and this is our main color. Using Rakarth Flesh as a highlight color, starting on all the edges, painting in some lines where maybe the paper is a bit bristled up or broken around these small recesses that's coming from the side, and adding some additional here and there. And then we're good to go to get some scripture in. I do this with Dryad Bark as a not black but darker color, and get in some small horizontal lines here and there. Don't keep your hand that steady. They could be a little bit wonky, because scripture isn't always in a straight line. And this is the same technique I used for the scripture on all the armor panels in Ulthu 1 Grey before. Going on to red. These are the crack grenades. Wazdugga Red on a damp brush with 2 coats, just to differentiate these grenades a bit color-wise from the wax on the purity seals and from the eye lenses. This is Wild Rider Red, final highlight on the grenades, just like a vertical line from top to bottom, and then feather it out a bit to the left and right. Going on over the purity seals, and we are good to go. For the eye lenses, I use the regular technique, as like maybe everyone does. Going into the front edge or corner of the eye that's around the nose piece. Brighten it up to there, starting with Mephiston Red, going over Wild Rider Red, Fire Dragon Bright, and Lugganoth Orange, to give it more of this like gemstone effect. For example, on the far side of the lens, the light enters with a light, small reflection point of Pallid Witchflesh, and due to this light diffusion, it illuminates, quote-unquote, the lens to the front in this spectrum from red to orange, like you can see here. If you want a separate gemstone tutorial for a kinda YouTube short, just let me know. Up to the laurel, it is several coats of brighter or of greens that are getting brighter each step. The first is Death Guard Green for a good coverage. The Castellan Green before is the shadow color, going on to a desaturated bright green for Nurgling Green here, and getting a final highlight there onto the tips with Deepkin Flesh. No, sorry, it's Ironrack Skin. I missed one color to give it a bit more of a three-dimensional look and prepare the ground for a small OSL later, that originating from the jump pack. All the soft armor and the straps on the chest are painted with Ashen Grey, followed up with Dawnstone and Administratum Grey, getting brighter with each layer and focusing the brightness on the areas where light would hit to give the better feeling of three-dimensionalism. Is this a word? I don't know, and actually I don't give a freaking damn. So then we grab White Scar. This is used like before with the Morphing Brown for rust effects to prepare the area where I want to spray paint the X later. This is for a good vibrant look there. But before we grab the airbrush, I paint in a small Maltesers or Templars cross on the left knee. Just scribble it in a rough shape of a cross, highlight it with Mephiston Red, and paint some crossed swords on top of it, like it's a campaign marking or a honor marking for something he achieved in the past, to give it more of this space monk, space knight feeling, this more feudal feeling that Space Marines got back in the time before there was Primaris Marines. Add in a bit of Wild Rider Red with and Ashen Grey to get some roughed up edges, and apply a bit more of Ulthuan Grey so that there are some scratches that rub off the paint of the company marking and going straight onto the color that's underneath the white paint. For the light effect and the energy axe, I use light gray, as I used previously at the start of the tutorial. For pre-shading, use this one to get the color that I apply later more vibrant. Onto the jump pack's exhausts, on these small vents on the jump pack, and onto the axe, as you can see here. And I masked off the surrounding of the jump pack's air intake, so that there is not that much overspray, and I got a defined edge there. First color is gold yellow. Apply this one straight onto the surfaces, onto the areas where the color would be like the brightest, or in case of the X, the hottest. like you can see here. The axe, the hottest area in my opinion, are around these small energy cable things and on the center of the blade, like this, and spray a bit onto the hilt, or is it the staff of the axe, and onto the hand that's holding the axe, so that there is already a light OSL prepared. Next up is orange fire. Spray paint around the brightest areas, as you could have seen on the turbine. And maybe you could see better on the axe. This is the color where I try to hit all the areas that I previously sprayed with the light gray, and leave some of the yellow showing through for a smooth color transition. Keep in mind, the more OSL you apply, the darker the miniature should be, or the darker the surrounding seems to be. So don't overdo it. OSL is a nice thing, but it could be overdone. Next up, scarlet red. This was the area while I painted where I decided, okay, I go for an effect like the lava or magma axe. This is the areas where maybe the axe is a bit cooler, so a bit darker in this case. Of course, I didn't like this huge axe head with all this yellow and orange. I need a bit more variation, and I apply it like this in the corners, on the tip of the axe head, and around the far side, so that it is a bit of transition and variation. Adding up a bit of charred brown to dull down the red a bit and give it an even cooler finish. Now it looks strange, but it would look better when we tackle the axe with a brush again. And in this case, as I had charred brown in the airbrush, I already spray painted the base and give some slight layers or light layers onto the bottom of the chin or leg guards and onto the boots, so that maybe some dust or mud accumulates on the legs of this marine while he jumps and stomps on the ground. Next up, removing the masking tape. You can see here, no overspray. Nice. Starting the detail work on the axe, this is corn red. A bit diluted, and painting in edge highlights. It's starting on the quote-unquote cooler areas and working my way around into the brighter or hotter areas, into the orangey and yellow areas. So it's like the magma axe effect, where the axe is the coolest, it's the darkest. Because if you check out for magma or lava in reality, or maybe the metal while in work on a blacksmith or a smeltery, it's like where it's the darkest, it's the coldest in relation to the bright areas. Hammering in this effect even more. This is a dried bark with a really damp brush for small thin layers, giving more the feeling that it's darker there, and adding even more with Corvus Black. And as you can see here, there are already some small dots and lines into the blade of the axe to give the feeling of not so smooth energy blade. I like this one while I do this, so I'm fine with it. Going back with Fire Dragon Bright, I paint in some of the highlights on the fingers and onto the axe staff, hilt, is it the hilt? No, it's the staff. This is like the edge highlighting for the OSL area to hammer in the effect that there is light coming from the blade of the axe that's showing edges or illuminate edges onto the axe itself. So keep in mind, as we got the highlight areas previously from roughly above, this is straight. The axe blade is in front of the staff, and so it directly shine in on the staff, and the highlights should be on the areas towards the light source, if you know what I mean, and maybe you can see it here a little bit better than I can explain. Getting another path with Lugganath Orange for an even brighter highlight here onto the knuckles that are closest to the energy or light source, and onto all these small edges here and there, as you can see here. And the same is true for the jump packed exhaust, and around the head later, when I glue in the jump pack, around the head where the light, quote-unquote light, from the jump pack's intakes would illuminate the laurel of the Marine a bit. As the jump pack is really hot, I use Dorn Yellow, a desaturated bright yellow tone, for these small recesses here on the back part. And as heat got a little bit of air flickering around it, I don't paint in the highlights that hard. I get it a little bit modeled up for this heat glow effect. A small recess shade or glazing on the axe for a bit more of a yellow feeling there, and then I paint in these small bars here with blue again, because the light from the jump packs come from inside, and the bars on the outside could not ever be illuminated by this, so I need to rework the previous color here. Then it's time for the base. This is Catachan Flashtone dry brushed on. For dry brushing, grab a bit of paper towel, get a bit of paint on a long bristled, maybe flat brush. Get rid of most of the paint on the brush, and then stipple it on, like pushing the bristles on or wiping them horizontal to the details onto the miniature, so that the recesses stay in the shadow and the raised areas would be hit by the brush. Repeat this step with Gore Thor Brown for a bit more of this dry mud or dry dirt feeling on the base and on the feet. And then I grab Dryad Bark and paint in some additional like edges here and there. This is more from above the previously said battle damage or roughed up areas, to give the feeling that there is the colored layer on the armor rubbed off till it hits the rust protection or manufacture color. That's, in my opinion, should be like a bit of a brownish tone. It's like a rust protection layer, and it looks more roughed up. But don't overdo this. He don't need to look like a dog chewing toy. He needs to look like a veteran of war that's in the midst of the fight. Next up are tufts, flock, paper plant, whatever you like for the base. In this case I go for Gamer's Grass, Dry Green and Wild Green. No, this is Autumn XL and Dry Green Wild, so it's called. And 2 paper plants are applied later. And I glaze the base of the tufts later with Catachan Flashtone to give it the feeling that the dust or mud is accumulating on the bottom of the plant, and paint in the base's edge in dried bark later, and we are good to go. And this is the finished miniature. Come on, this was really quick, quicker than usual for my tutorials. I hope you liked it. The next one in the pipeline is a incursor / infiltrator / scout of the Ultramarines in a desert armor. I am looking forward to release this one really soon, and hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of me painting Inquisitor miniatures or other stuff, just leave a comment and wish what you want me to paint. We see us in the next one. Till then, I'm out. Keep on wargaming!